about integrating, we'll talk about integrating generative AI technology into your pedagogy and class. I'm Dr. Paul Wilson with Shaw University. I'll be sharing with you. And I would like to say thank you so much to the UNCF TLC staff that has invited me to share today. I appreciate the opportunity. I appreciate all that they have contributed to this project. So, as we start, I will be talking about generative AI. And as you see on the screen, I have identified November 30, 2022 as the birthday for the launch of Chat GPT. As members of the Academy, we know that something significant happened when this large language learning model was launched, and students as well as faculty had access to it. So we are now living in generative AI chatbots territory with ChatGPT, Claude, DALL-E 3, Poe, Bing, and Bard. And as we get started today, I want to say we'll have a couple of polls. One will gauge your experience with AI, and a little later, we'll look at policies. So I'd like at this time to launch the first poll, please. Okay, very good. And that's sort of what I was expecting. I'm looking at results. And our results are, and we'll share those, 78% familiar, some not really familiar, and some no knowledge at all, which is good. Okay, so let's move on. And as we do so, okay, so I'm trying to push this slide. Mine's not pushing forward now. Oh, got it. Today's learning objectives are these. We'll be able to identify AI policies at our institution. We'll be able to recognize pros and cons. We should be able to define and analyze two or more of users' attitudes toward AI and metaphors. And today, before we're finished, I hope to show you a plan for incorporating AI activities in your class and learning experiences. So let's keep going. The first thing we want to talk about a bit is AI policy basics. Beginning in fall, I have to say I was searching, like many, regarding what the policy was. And in my search to understand more about AI, and in attending many workshops and presentations, I find this general approach. There is the forbidding of AI, as some of my colleagues said they wanted to do. There's allowing AI use. And then there is this vague hope it goes away. Really? I don't think so. We're going to have to think of what these policies are as we go forward. And we're going to stop right here and ask you to do the second poll. Just appraise what the policy is, if any, on your campus. So let's launch that second poll. Okay, so we're getting some good reactions here. All right. Anyone else want to chime in on the policy poll? Okay, let's make that a wrap, and we'll share the results. So 13% say they're relying on the standing poll policy. Others say they are working it out, no guidance, or expects instructors to develop a policy. This is not an easy thing. And of course, we're trying to work through this too. And that's part of why we're talking about this today. Thank you for sharing that poll. So, wherever your institution is at, okay, let's see. Okay, I'm trying to get back to pushing the slide. Let me stop and restart that. Okay. Well, I'm going to stop my share. We're not moving ahead with this one.
Do you want us to try to see if we could pull it up for you and we can do the slides for you, Dr. Wilson?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's good.
Yeah, so let's do that. See? Technology in the classroom.
Yes.
Always shifting. Loading. Okay, yes, we're able to see.
Good. Okay. And let's go forward. So, whatever policy we come up with, we as instructors are still going to have in the first day a decision. Instructors are confronting this question: will I allow AI use? And the students also are confronting this question: will my instructor allow me to use it? Now, we may or may not be on the same page, but this is still going to be a question that we have to work out, whatever the policy is. Let's go forward. Now, the reason we are so anxious about this as instructors goes back to something basic and at the core of what we're doing, and that's integrity and plagiarism. We want to be about integrity. We don't want to encourage plagiarism. And if it's not enough for us to feel compelled to that, then of course we have administration that's going to hold us accountable. And reminding ourselves of the four dimensions of integrity, we want to show consistency, truthfulness, we want to act rightly, and we want to accept responsibility. So all of these are components in being correct, in upholding integrity, and we're somewhat fearful about the use of AI. Next slide. But from the student side, why is it important? If a student is using AI, if they're using it incorrectly, then of course our concern is, well, we need a conversation about plagiarism. But from their side, part of the issue is plagiarism lets someone or something else speak for you. I was at a Mellon conference at Claflin University, and one of the organizers reminded us that you're losing your voice if you are engaging in plagiarism or allowing AI to do your work. So ask yourself this: would you let someone else vote for you? Now, that's pretty dangerous. Just give up your right, give up your ability to vote and have a voice. But would you let somebody else think for you? That's the danger behind plagiarism. Next slide. So I started talking about this in my fall practice. What was I doing in class? As we entered fall, we came together as a department and accepted the Merriam-Scott rubric that you see on the screen. We all posted this in our classes. In my class, it was known that I would allow some restricted use of AI. I would inspect for it, and then I would follow up with students who might be using it. Now, all that's good, all that's above board, but when I reviewed my policy, then I began to think about it and say, this is positive. I'm not forbidding it, but I'm being reactive. I'm not being proactive. So coming into spring and rethinking this AI issue, I've decided to make some changes to my practice. Next slide, please. So my practice for spring will be different than fall. I've already posted for the students this very same rubric. And you can see it's pretty clear. It tells students about plagiarism on the unethical side. And under the ethical use, we have idea generation or feedback, brainstorming, and so on. I acknowledge the role of AI in class. I've told students it's there. I know it's there. You know it's there. I don't want to be silent. I contact students using AI, and I provide student learning activities that use generative AI in class for spring. I'm also giving them scaffolding for these assignments. What's the difference? Well, the difference is this becomes positive and it's proactive. I don't want students to simply use it on their own. I want to incorporate it. And as I do so, I want to help the students understand how they can use it properly. So by doing this, I'm being proactive in saying I'm doing something different and I'm showing you how to make use of it. Next slide, please. Now, as we talk about using AI in class, just this past week, I was grading assignments and the conversation came up between myself and a student about AI. And as these conversations go, on the side of the detector, it looked as if she had given me a paper that was AI. Well, I could just stop out and say, okay, that's no good, 0. But knowing what I do know about AI and what I would share with you is a reason to have a conversation with a student, not to indict a student. So as our conversation unfolded, she told me she was an athlete who was an international student, and she was using Grammarly, and Grammarly was doing things to help her improve her output, her assignment. As a result, it flagged what happened. You can see here on the screen a fatal flaw in most defensive policies. Now, this fatal flaw is we cannot accurately detect AI. So we're going to get a lot of false positives. If I approach students and am engaged with them over a false positive, well, that's my responsibility, and that's a failure on my part. This, what you see here, is a product that was submitted to me in the fall. And the screenshot is showing what Turnitin says. Now, I would have you know that Vanderbilt University, Harvard, and others have turned in capabilities, and they have turned off that function just because of this problem. Next slide, please. But I don't want you to think it's just about being mixed up and we're making the wrong mistakes. The fatal flaw is much more important than that. We can't accurately detect AI because there are many AI tools that will humanize writing. And in fact, there are ways to make your AI bots like ChatGPT humanize its own writing. What you see on the screen here is one version of these humanizing bots that will go back behind a student or you, and they will humanize what you're doing. What's the visibility? Very low. Is it going to change? Yes. These humanizers are going to get better and better and better. So we really can't tell when AI is involved. Next slide, please. So what I want to do is engage you and engage students in thinking about the metaphor that we use as we begin using AI. How am I going to approach AI? It's a tool. It's not a person. A generative bot is a tool. And I can approach it as my ghostwriter, or I can approach it as my tutor. Now, this is so fundamental, understanding what my metaphor is for using AI. In another context, listening to a presenter, she reported that she calls AI the driving instructor. And if you think about that for a moment, a driving instructor, sure, we could see that as a metaphor. But if you're just going to use it as a go-to place to be a substitute for you, sort of surrogate for what you're doing, the ghostwriter, that's a totally different thing than allowing it to be my tutor. When you allow it to be my tutor, you're empowering yourself. As long as it's your ghostwriter, you're losing your voice. Next slide, please. Now, when I say I'm looking at it as a tutor, I'm joining several other educators who are looking at it as a tutor. In the Harvard Business Education periodical, Ethan Mollick and Lilac Mollick said, generative AI, if fed deliberately designed and structured prompts, has the potential to give every student a personalized tutoring experience on any topic. Now, I want to go back to UNCF. I want to say this, and I may repeat this again. I was part of their cohort 2 last spring, and I learned a great deal about teaching that way. And one of the emphasis there is on equitable education, engaging students and being equitable in the class. Personalized tutoring experience is available with AI, providing it's your tutor. That's powerful. Next slide, please. Stop for a moment with me and think about the pros and cons. Yes, there are negatives, but there's positives in using AI as a tutor. Some of these are it helps students become industry ready because AI is industry friendly. If I say to a student, no, we're not going to talk about that, we're not going to use that, I don't want you to even think about it. That sounds very good, but in all honesty, I'm doing a disservice to my students. I say that because they will go into the workplace where AI is already inundating the job market. And if they're not ready for that, that's a default on my part. I would be holding them back. It's industry friendly. It's a time saver. Just be honest. I've got colleagues that I've heard telling me that it will write great recommendation letters. I haven't tried it, but sounds good to me. It gives personalized learning. And this last one promotes equitable learning. I want to go back again to that UNCF talking about student engagement and equitable learning. Now, the persons that I listened to in a recent presentation were part of K-12 education. And they were working with students with disabilities. One of the presenters had a student with autism in their family. And they were saying that with the help of AI, their students were feeling equitable and able to engage at a higher level. Their students with disabilities were feeling equitable and able to engage in a higher level. That's a real pro. If this can help our students make up for learning gaps, we need to do this. But what are the cons? Is it all positive? No. There is the issue of integrity. We already know that. And it can be a trap if students fall into it. One of the reasons I want to present it is to show how we can do it positively. There is the dependency. I don't think I told you, Geneva, about a group of graduates who were working on AI, and they had gotten together after class to go an evening on town, and they were saying to one another, okay, we're together, we're out of school, what do we do? And one of them said, well, I don't know, let's ask AI. Come on now. You got to figure out your evening out. Okay, hallucinations and misinformation. Hallucinations is the official name for AI write-ins. What's an AI write-in? If you are calling for 10 resources, AI will always give you 10 resources. It's very friendly. But if it only finds 8, it's going to give you 2 hallucinations with a good publisher and a good title and a good name, but they're never in print. So we've got to watch out for hallucinations. Or we know from the political field, deep fakes. Next slide. So as I go through here, I'm trying to get us to think of AI as a potential tutor. And as I was exploring this, I said, well, let me try to find a top 10 exercises. So here's a starter list of top 10 exercises. And as I go through, I hope this inspires you to say, well, you left something out, or I would add this. I hope you will say that because that helps me and it helps you begin to think of a list of tutoring from AI. Blank page starter. AI is great for brainstorming. Where do I start? What do I say? Professor prompt clarification. AI is tremendous for taking something from my abstract level. I didn't ask you that, but my abstract level all the way to third grade. It's good for critiquing a student project. It'll give me resources. It will tell me famous people associated with ideas. If I ask it for an Einstein genius answer, what's the Einstein genius answer to homelessness and why? It'll come up with something for me. Quiz me and re-quiz me. It will do that. Big and little. What's the biggest? What's the littlest? What's the Guinness Book of World Records say? Summarize the lecture. One of my colleagues gives his lecture notes to his class. He then asks his students each to put the notes into AI and then to interact with it and make notes regarding his lecture. And it will grade assignments and suggest improvements. Now I have here two highlighted. The reason being that I want to talk more in depth with you about how I am putting these two things to work in my class. So the first is quiz me, and then I'll come back to critique. Next slide, please. I have here on the screen a link to a training video. And this is a chat bot. It's a chat bot I created in just a few minutes for my class. So I hope I give you the idea. You can play with this and create your own chat bot. You could name it after yourself. This chat bot, by the way, is named Religion Rev Bot 1. And coming up with such inventive names, I put it in class, and I put it in class to help students with review. So here's a tutorial. You can find that in the slides, and you can go back there if you want to train yourself. I created this with a little bit of help in less than 30 minutes. If you're interested in following this, you can do the same. Next slide. So what did I do with this? I went to my class, and where I normally have students quizzed, I will also give them a review sheet. Now, this I was told, along with some other things, is good practice. And again, we're talking about, some of the things that I learned from UNCF. Well, one of the things was that you need to prep students. So yes, I'll be sharing that link, right. So prep students, if you're going to quiz them and maybe even give them an opportunity to redo. Well, here is something I dropped in class, the review bot. It's right after I dropped in the review vocabulary. So a student can take a vocabulary term, let's say SNCC, Student Nonviolent Committee for Action. And they're going to put in SNCC into the chat bot. It will then generate an answer about what that is historically, and so on. You need to try this. Let's go to the next screen. So I said I wanted to also talk to students about critiquing a project. Now, this is going to require a little more scaffolding from me, but this is where they get to interact directly with a chatbot. Now, I'll be giving students the opportunity for them to work with ChatGPT or Bing or Bard. I say they can make a choice. You need an account for ChatGPT, but I'm going to craft the prompt. One of the things that has to be done when we work with AI chatbots is to craft great prompts. And I'm going to craft a prompt for them. All this I've tested beforehand. So the first prompt is, Dear Chat Bot, will it be Chat GPT or something else? If I give you ABC, can you score C? That is, if I give you a writing prompt, a rubric, and a draft, can you score it? Now, I've tried this with some student work products. And what I did was I used my prompt, that's the professor. I used my school rubric, the one I have in class. And then I combined that with the student work product to see what would come about. So to set this up, you have to first prime or prompt the chat bot. And that's the prompt that I'll give to students. Let's go to the next slide. Now, looking at this is going to be a template that I give to the students to fill in. So they're going to give the bot the prompt, then they'll fill in this template and they'll upload it. So this requires some scaffolding, but this has a payoff. So you can see on the screen, I've already created this template. I put my writing prompt in there. Normally, I would have them write a paper about Dr. King's beloved community. This is on that, and they have to do their own draft on this. Now I give them the rubric. We have it in class, but you'll see here that on the template, it says student draft. They have to insert the draft, their draft, that's pushing them to write something. And they're going to then have all this in the template ready to upload to the chat bot. The outcome will be that the chat bot will evaluate either in terms of points or in terms of qualities what they've done. And the chatbot will make some suggestions. For instance, when I fed in one work product, it said, you're on the right track, but you need more historical examples. So at that point, the student can come back and say, okay, I need to adjust here. I'll go and find an example. I'll redo, And then all of this comes back to me to demonstrate they have used AI and they have rewritten and in the process rethought what they were doing with class. So next slide. Yes. So we've been looking at technology in pedagogy and classroom. And I hope as we've gone through this, you are getting 4 takeaways. We need to clarify how we use generative AI in class. And I hope you understand the gap between the policy and what we do. The policy will be there, but we practitioners are going to have to tell the students this is the way we play the game. This is the way we use AI, or however we manage that. A takeaway I hope you gather is that generative AI in class can promote equitable education. You know, one of the concerns we have with our students is they may not all have come from the same starting place. They may not all have had the same opportunities. Someone in another context said, this AI is a great equalizer because it's open access. Yes, but we need to help the students understand it can help them. Faculty and students can see it is a personalized learning tutor. As instructors, one of the simplest but most profound things we'll do is to give our students tools to think with. And one of those tools is metaphors. How do we see these tools? And last, I hope a takeaway for you will be to see some of the things that can be done. And as I went through my list, I hope that you had some ideas to tell me I left out. Very good. And that will help me and help you as you think about using AI. Let's move to the last slide. So it's time for some questions.
I have a question.
Yes.
When you said you were using AI as or promoting the use of AI as a tool to help students critique their work, can you speak more about what you noticed with like the suggestions AI was giving, versus what you might have said to your students if you had done that? What is the comparison
Sure.
between the type of critique they might get? Thank you.
Well, thank you. And that's from Shen with our writing center. So a good question. We appreciate that. Part of that is really going to depend on those prompts. If I had left out my rubric, then there wouldn't be the kind of quality that I do see. It's going to give you some very general background unless you are feeding it some questions along the way. Now, I want to get students introduced. So I'm only going, we'll say, to the first level or 1 deep. But working with AI, what I find is I can go to the second or third level with some more prompts. If it comes back and says, you need some historic examples, I can then work that. Well, what kind of an example would that be? Or could you help me understand what that is? And I'll get results. Now, again, I'm only at the edge getting students' feet wet. But, working with them, if they will sit upon the project and work it forward, they can get those kind of fine-grained responses. But you need the prompts to be set up. You give it a rubric. Will you score this? Would you look specifically at the quality of the grammar and so on? Then it's going to get into that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. Do we have some questions in the chat?
I have a question, Dr. Wilson. There
Yes.
is a research class which my students do extensively. And then part of the thing I heard today is trying to pull some resources from legitimate, places.
Yes.
And I want to know, when they're compiling these things and then they are not attributing some of the things they found to a legitimate or reliable sources, how is it that AI can enable the professor to distinguish whether that information source is a legitimate one or the one that AI is enabling them to use?
Yes, right. Well, AI is going to return a response when it's queried about research resources. Yes. Now, as an example, it may generate, I'll say, 10 sources. And previously, I'd mentioned about hallucinations, two of them being hallucinations. Now, understand AI, particularly Chat GPT, whether it be 3, 4, 5, they're operating within a limited sphere of information. People that work in the business field know, say from IBM, how to manipulate a chatbot to get more current information. But without those specific prompt manipulations, it's going to draw from a certain amount of time and a certain database. How do you know? You have to go behind it and check reliability. See? You have to be the checker behind the resource. Well, that's double work. Well, yes and no. I mean, it's already generating a list for you, but you are the one who at the end has to say it's reliable. Now you and I being colleagues, we know we at the end of the day have to verify on our students. Okay, well, if you're presenting it as your work, you need to be checking out what kind of resources you're saying you have. That's part of your responsibility, and that's part of media literacy. So, there has to be that media literacy component in what we do as we work with AI. I hope that answered your question. Other questions? Questions from the chat?
Thank you. I appreciate that. I didn't unmute.
Yeah.
Right. So we are really, really gracious to Dr. Wilson for this presentation. I learned a lot about generative AI. I hope you all did as well. So next slide, we will be sharing our social media for you to join the conversation on our LinkedIn page. So you'll be able to access our LinkedIn via the link that Kiriako will be posting. And also we'll be sharing the link for our evaluation. So if you do have a couple minutes, it shouldn't take you too long. I'd say less than 5 minutes to complete the evaluation. We absolutely do use the feedback and then share the feedback also with the professor. So Dr. Wilson will get to see all the glaring great reviews that you have for his presentation this afternoon. So yes, thank you, Kiriako, for posting that back up. So yeah, if you're able to, you can use your phone to scan the QR code on the bottom right, or if not, you can just go ahead and look at the link. So it's essentially just linkedin.com/showcase/UNCF Teaching and Learning Center. It's a little lengthy. If you're able to log into LinkedIn, you can just look up UNCF Teaching and Learning Center. That probably is the quickest way to find us, and you'll be able to access our landing page there. So when you get to our landing page, you'll be able to see all of the previous TLC talks that we've done in the fall semester. So we had about 6 professors present over the course of the fall. Really wonderful presentations as well. So you can view those videos if you have some time, or if you just want to stay informed about research, diversity on HBCU campuses, how to integrate technology in a different way. So we've done other technology presentations, but not specific to AI. So I'm glad we have this now in the docket as well. And then, yeah, so thank you very much. And this is wrap up, but by all means, if you want to stick around and chat, we are here until the top of the hour, so until 1 p.m. Eastern time. So that gives us about 8 more minutes to hang around and converse about whether it be your experience in AI, or what you've learned over the past couple of months about it related to AI, or if you use it in your classroom.